Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. If you're new to the channel, thanks for tuning in, and if you're not, thanks for returning. I appreciate it. Just when you thought we'd finished talking about 1972, here I am again. Now, those of you that have watched the channel for a while might conclude that one or two things have happened. Either I've discovered some material that just didn't fit into any of the previous episodes on 1972, or I forgot about them completely and I've only just come across them. I think the truth is probably somewhere between the two on this occasion, but I thought it was worth just a little sort of finale to 1972, just to talk about a couple of things that I didn't get to in the previous episodes. And one of those things I want to talk about is standing room only. So, the concept for the standing room only emerged early in 1972. RCA had recorded some dates of Elvis for his January-February engagement in Las Vegas. I think they'd recorded some dates in February. And out of that, American Trilogy was pulled out for a single release. And on that single release, it actually plugged the forthcoming standing room only album. So people were expecting that to be a release. The reality is what actually happened was when Elvis played Madison Square Garden, that album was rush release. Now, the thing about the standing room only, it wasn't the first time that an album had not appeared. If we go back into the mid-60s, we've got the so-called Lost album with the tracks recorded in studio tracks recorded in 62, 60. 63, 64, in Nashville. So it wasn't the first time that RCA had been planning an album and it just never came to fruition. But I think, this time it had been actually, advertised on a single release as being something that was going to be coming out. But what happened, I think, nobody knows for certain, as far as I can glean, whether the intention was that Standing Room Only was going to be a pure live album, or kind of hark back a little bit to That's the Way It Is and have some live tracks, some studio tracks, and they'd probably use the tracks that were recorded in 72. And interestingly enough, the working title of Elvis on Tour was Standing Room Only. But, the reality of what happened was that Madison Square Garden album was rush released, and I think by the time that was out, RCA had then kind of lost their appetite to put out another album of live material soon after it. So it got pushed back and it got pushed back, and eventually it got abandoned completely, which is a shame. But what happened was in 1999, they gave us this release, Burning Love. Now, to me, this was Sony's first sort of Sony BMG in 1999. This was their first attempt at kind of rectifying things and giving us a taste of what the Standing Room Only album could have been. So there's your track list. And as you can see, you've got a selection there of tracks, studio tracks that were recorded in 1972. You've got some leftover studio tracks from 71, things like I'm Leaving, It's Only Love. And then you've got live tracks recorded in 72. So, had this have come out in this format in 72, the fact that it was using material that was left over from 71 was no new thing. Look at Elvis now in 72, and that was using stuff from 69 and 70, so that was no new thing. So it's entirely conceivable. Obviously, had this been an LP in 1972, it wouldn't have had as many tracks as this on it, but I think this was a really nice first taster for us, really, of what Standing Room Only might have been. I loved this when it came out in 1999. I played it heavily. In fact, I still play it to this day. I think it's a great little compilation. Right, there's not been a 90s CD release. You get the cover of the Burning Love actual Camden Pickwick album. And being a 90s release, you don't get a lot in the booklet. You don't get very much at all. That was the case, really, back in the day. And also around this time, they did like to sort of almost colour code their booklets. So this one's pretty much almost entirely red and black. But yeah, you get some liner notes. But yeah, I think this was the first attempt at kind of giving us a flavour of what the Standing Room Only album might have been. But then in 2009, Follow That Dream Up the Ante. Now this is the CD version of the Standing Room Only album. There is a vinyl version. The vinyl version goes for silly money. I haven't got it, and I'm pretty sure I'll never own it for the price it fetches these days. But I've got this, the CD version. I believe that when Standing Room Only was in its sort of concept stages, a number of photographs were mooted for the cover, and this was one of them. But then the executives or powers that be or whatever decided that they were going to pull this image and use this for the Madison Square Garden album. So you know, that was another thing that was gone from the Standing Room Only concept. But yeah, this is another stab at sort of putting things right and giving us the album that never was. So what you get there is the sort of concept of live and studio tracks. What this doesn't do that Burning Love did, this doesn't delve back into 71. This gives us pure 72 material. So you get a mix of live and studio. So it is, you know, kind of similar vein to That's the Way It Is in concept. And then you get a second disc of the studio outtakes of the material on the first disc. So it's a nice little release, and it does kind of almost finally put things right, I guess. I'm not sure how it probably would have looked, you know, concept at the time. I'm sure that's not far off what the back cover may well have looked like in 72, because let's face it, you know, every release plugged the current material. So you get your two discs, and that's the cover shot of the vinyl version of this FTD release. So let's have a little look at the booklet. You should see, like, heavily featuring on tour material, which is fitting, if you know, as that was had a working title of Standing Room Only, and it was probably that coming out that kind of almost finally put the final nail in the coffin for the Standing Room Only release. Yeah, lots of material from the time, steeped in 1972 and Elvis on tour. I think it's, you know, it's nice that, you know, they get around to giving us the album that might have been, that never was. So yeah, great listen, this great release. This can be picked up, the CD version, certainly for a minuscule fraction of the price that the vinyl goes for. But yeah, nice little release that. So yeah, that's Standing Room Only, the concept of Standing Room Only, and what might have been. And then just to finish off, really, for 72, two things that I didn't get around to last time, and that's two vinyl releases that came out, two legacy vinyl releases that came out in 2023. So we have, which size is better for that? The Record Store Day release of Burning Love, the RCA rehearsals. So that gives you selected rehearsals that were taking place at 6363 Sunset, or I think quite a lot of them were the studio at 6363 Sunset Boulevard in 1972. There's a bit of blurb there. And another release that does feature material around this time is an FTD CD called 6363 Sunset. The reason that I didn't pull that one out is it doesn't focus solely on recordings from 72. It's got recordings from 75 as well. So I'll probably pull that one out when we eventually get to 75. But there's your inner gatefold. Really, really nicely put together. So, yeah, the vinyl release of the RCA rehearsals from 72. And then the last vinyl release that I didn't get to before, this was in 2023 also, and this is Elvis Live 1972. And what this does, it takes material from the 4 concerts that were recorded for the Elvis on Tour movie. So Hampton Roads, Richmond Coliseum, Greensboro, and San Antonio, Texas, April the 9th, 10th, 14th, and 18th. And it basically gives you an amalgam of them, which is what one of the discs on the Elvis Now in Person 1972 book and CD release did. But this is your vinyl version. And this one's still pretty easy to pick up. I think the Burning Love rehearsals is getting slightly harder to get for a decent price now, simply because it was a more limited release. It was a record store daily release, but this was a general sort of out there in all record shops kind of release, so it is easier to get. Again, lovely gatefold artwork, really nicely put together. So all in all, a pretty fantastic couple of releases, these really. Glad to have these two. So we've got Live 72 and Burning Love, and then just to recap, got a couple of releases centred around the abandoned Standing Room Only album, FTD Classic album, and then this one, which is really easy to pick up, is the Burning Love CD. So there you go, that really is about it for 1972 now. I think I've exhausted that particular well in my collection. So next time definitely we're going to be moving on a little bit. So thank you for watching. As ever, it's hugely appreciated. Please, as ever, again, do all the good stuff, like, share, comment, subscribe. Brilliant help to the channel, and I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. Next time we are definitely leaving 1972 behind us and we're heading into 1973. So until then, take care. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.